All right.
Yeah, there are people coming in to the waiting room or the attendees.
Okay, yeah, there we go.
Oh, and Jeff Quain has been trying to log in, but he says he's been bouncing off. So if you guys could send him a link, I think. He might have been bouncing off the practice room. And I'll try also. Okay, let's give Jeff another minute and let's get started. Okay. Sam, Palumi, do you want to get started? And did I say your name properly?
Yes, that's correct.
Okay, good.
Thank you.
Sam, I was a little worried about, but I figured I could get your name properly.
All right, I think we're good to get started on the workshop for the Board of Zoning Appeals. Sam, you can go on to the next slide.
Yep, let me, there we go. The time is 6:07.
Okay, so on the workshop agenda today, we have 3 items. The first was the rehearing of the area variance for 1053 Broadway. The second is the area variance request for 185 Henry Johnson Boulevard. And the last item is the discussion of the 2022 BZA calendar. I just wanted to request if we could start with 185 Henry Johnson and then circle back to 1053 so that Martha could sort of take that through.
Okay, and Jeff just texted me to say that he is, it's not letting him join as a panelist. So I think he's stuck somewhere in the waiting room or something.
Rich, can you guys hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, I think I'm in. It had me in as you for a moment, but I think I'm all set now.
Okay. Yeah, there you are. Okay, take it away, Sam and Palumi. And we'll start with, as you said, 185 Henry Johnson, Roy's Caribbean.
All right, Sam, you want to go to the next slide? Okay, so this is just the project overview. So the project is in a mixed-use community urban zoned area, and they're requesting for a variance from the ordinance which talks about the minimum required off-street parking. The project proposal is to ask for 3 off-street parking spaces and 4 on-street parking spaces, whereas the expansion actually requires 26 total off-street parking spaces. So there is a variance request for 19 additional spaces to be able to meet the standards. Sam, we can go on to the next one. So this is just to give you an idea of what the site looks like. What we're looking at is the view of Roy's Caribbean from 3rd Street. So Sam, if you can hover, the first floor is where you have the restaurant, and the 2nd and the 3rd floor are residential areas. So it's currently operating as a restaurant with 2 residential units. And the property on the left is owned by the city and is currently used as a parking by the Albany Police Department. Sam, we can go on to the next one. Okay, so this is to give you an overview of the site. The location highlighted in green is the view of Roy's that we just saw. And the rest of the highlights, which are overlaid in orange, is the property that they're looking, or they have already acquired from the city. So these are 4 additional parcels that they'll be using for the project expansion. And if you look to the right, this just shows you that the project site is currently in a mixed-use community urban zoned area and is surrounded by residential areas. So we can go on to the next one. So the project is currently undergoing a minor development plan review. And I just wanted to show you what the existing site plan is. So the area on the left hashed with orange is the property, and they are, as you can see, 217, 219, 221. This is all a parking space that they will be building on. So the expansion looks like the site plan on the right side. So they're proposing to add 4 additional residential units. So this property will have in total 6 residential units, and they're expanding the restaurant to include a bar and a banquet. And in addition, they will be having an accessory garage space. So that's what the minor development is currently undergoing. So if you can go to the next slide, Sam. Okay. So this is just to go over what are the ordinance that they're requesting a variance from. So we're looking at the parking and loading portion of the development standards of the ordinance. And if you look at the table, so it shows you what the code requires. So the current project has 2 principal uses. It is a residential multifamily as well as a restaurant. So as per the code, you require 1 parking spot per unit. And for the restaurant, you need 1 parking per 150 square feet. So in total, when you account for the required parking, while taking into consideration the shared parking spaces and the proximity, you require 26 spaces as per the applicant. But when we calculated at our end, it was 20 spaces. So that's currently under review. But essentially, there is considerable deviance from what the standard requires. Sam, you can go on to the next one. So just this is an overview of the criteria for the area variance, where we just want to balance the benefit to the applicant to the detriment to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood, of the community. And we'll be going over these 5 questions as we review the application. Sam, going to the next. Okay. So for the first one, we're looking at the character of the neighborhood. to assess whether there's been any undesirable change or detriment to the nearby properties. Sam, if you can go forward. Yeah. So for this particular question, the applicant mentioned that they had been operating without access to off-street parking this entire time. So they were essentially grandfathered in because they were existing prior to the code went into effect. And they also stated that there are multiple commercial ventures along along Henry Johnson Boulevard, which has been operating without off-street parking. So I just wanted to note here that we do understand that MUCU district encourages use of a variety of retail, residential, and commercial uses, especially in small blocks, which have been identified similar to where 185 Henry Johnson is located. But the applicant needs to provide additional examples to show that the variance will not impact the character of the neighborhood and would not be a detriment. So in the deficiency letter that we sent out, we asked them to provide details of the existing usage of the restaurant space to understand how much more they're expecting it to increase in terms of the volume of customers, and also the anticipated usage of the banquet space. So that's the first one. And the second, we want to understand how they're hoping to meet the parking demands from the proposed operations on site when all of them will be in operation together. So the 6 residential units, the bar, the banquet, and the garage. So the 26 parking spaces, so the 20 contested parking spaces, how they intend to manage that. And the last one is, they did mention that there are commercial ventures along Henry Johnson, which are operating in a similar fashion. So we would like them to provide some examples of, similar operating sizes, or rather examples of ventures of similar operating sizes, which have the similar parking needs and how they're managing their parking demands. Sam, you can go to the next slide.
Actually, before you go on, Pulumi,
Yep.
do any board members have any questions about the first element or elements? I'll take that as a no. I do have a question, which is, how much is the restaurant expanding? Because you're now saying it's 4,700 and some square feet, but it's nowhere near that big right now.
So the proposal is for around 9,000 gross square feet, and it's currently at 2,500 square feet approximately. So it's almost expanding by 3 to 4 times in just the gross area. This includes not just the restaurant, but also the residential units and the banquet. Sam, do you have like the breakdown of just the restaurant in the master application maybe?
Yeah, so the first floor area, so just the restaurant right now is 1,382 square feet, and the proposed first floor area is 5,435 square feet.
Cool. Okay, that's a big change. All right.
Can I ask another quick question about the residential? Are those, do you know if they're like 1 bed or 2, 3? I'm just sort of curious about expected occupancy of those.
So from what we understand, they have applied for multifamily, but I can get back to you on the exact details because that will be in the minor development review. So I'll get back to you with that.
Thanks.
Okay. Any other questions for Pulumi and Sam about the first test? No? Okay, please keep going then.
So the next one asks more about the alternatives that the applicant considered to achieve the same benefit without requiring a variance. So Sam, you want to go? Okay. So the applicant responded saying that no alternatives were considered because any alternatives would require a change to the building footprint, which would also require an area variance. And they require the area variance to be able to have this expansion and to be able to operate the banquet and the additional apartments. So in terms of staff review, we feel that the applicant did not demonstrate how the variance requested was the minimum variance required. And so we would like them to consider some of the below questions in being able to reapply this application. So we want them to tell us what are the changes that can be made to the building if, in order to reduce the variance proposed, and if they have identified alternative parking resources in the neighborhood or in close proximity. And if at all possible, we would like them to do a transportation demand management study of the site so that we can address some of the traffic circulation and pedestrian safety related concerns.
Yeah, these are good questions. Thank you. Does the board have any further questions on this element?
No, the alternatives considered in the application seem more focused on the operations of the restaurant, as in this is a, alternatives considered would change the business model. I don't think that's what the application was asking the applicant for. It was more alternatives considered to alleviating the variance. I do know across the street at the planning department offices, a portion of that lot is eligible to be used by residents unless I'm mistaken. And so I wonder if there are other opportunities that the residents of this project or the business could work out with adjacent property owners to use the lots, because certainly a lot of those parking lots in that part of the corridor are empty in the evening, as most of the demand for those lots occurs during the day. So curious as to whether those alternatives were considered and whether they proved burdensome, hence the applicant's request for the variance for off-street parking.
Yeah, so if you could ask them those questions so that they'll supplement the application and the record when they do their follow-up on this.
Okay.
And particularly the APD parking lot is not full. I don't know if they, what they do with their extra spaces, but it's almost never full. So I would expect they should talk to the APD and see if they can work something out. Okay, cool. Would you keep going, please?
So the next test is to determine the substantiality of the area variance requested. Sam, if you can go to the next one. So the applicant responded by giving us a calculation of the on-street parking spaces available within the 2 blocks of the building. And they identified 59 on-street parking and 3 off-street parking. And their proposal is to use this since they do not think that the residences will be using this parking at all times, and it might be vacant for use by the applicant. As a staff recommendation, we think there is substantial deviation from what the code is proposing.
Yeah, you should tell them that the element of substantiality is not dispositive, so they should just admit it. That doesn't mean that we're going to deny them anything. This is not, that's not an instant fail, but that their answer doesn't address the question. So they're asking for, they're only 1/3 of the required spaces. So, yeah. But they should make sure to address the actual question. Okay, any other questions from the board for this one? Okay, do you mind going on then, please?
This is just a site overview that the applicant had provided to identify those locations. So if you see those white spaces that are marked, so they had made the calculation of 59 plus the additional 3 off-street parking and shown, the days when there is no parking and when, restrictive parking requirements. So we can actually go on to the next one, Sam. So the 4th criteria asks if there is any adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions in the neighborhood. Sam, we can go to the next slide. So the applicant responded saying that there'll be no impact, but the staff recommendation is that without a detailed transportation demand management plan, the granting of the proposed variance could potentially have a negative impact on traffic circulation and pedestrian safety, especially since they're proposing to use the off-street parking on the east side of Henry Johnson, and there's already considerable data to show that there are near misses or accidents in the area with pedestrians crossing. So it would be helpful if they could provide a study and address to mitigate some of these issues.
Can I ask a question about, you said of the 7 spaces, are any of those designated ADA or handicap?
So I believe there is an ADA requirement of 1. And this is still under review by traffic. So I'm not sure if they will, come back with more requirements, but as of now, 1 is designated for ADA for sure, but I can get back to you once that review is complete.
Thank you. And do you know, or is Bill Trudeau looking at whether their suggestion that most of their parking spaces be dealt with by having people park on the street would displace any handicap spaces, or whether there should be an addition of handicap spaces to existing on-street parking?
I understand that he is reviewing it, so I'll get back to you on that.
Okay.
I understand.
Now, the applicant is saying that there's no change on the sewer. Is the water department looking at that to make sure that the sewer has enough capacity there for the additional units and a 4.5 times the size increase of the restaurant?
So the minor development plan review, while it is done internally by the planning staff, goes to all the city departments. So it will be circulated for comments to all the departments.
I would imagine they would need new hookups too, so.
Yeah. Okay. Anyone else have any other questions for that one? Okay, please continue.
This is the last test for the area variance review to determine if the difficulty was self-created. Sam, can you go to the next one? So the applicant answered that it's a self-created difficulty.
Good. No one ever says that. Thank you. Any other questions that we'd like the applicant to address before they come forward with a completed application at a future public hearing of the board? Okay, Martin looks happy with it. Yeah, thanks. Okay, I think we're good with that then. If you don't mind getting in touch with them and giving them the board's questions, I think that we will hopefully have enough to review a total application at the next meeting.
Okay. Sam, you want to go to the next portion of the agenda?
Yeah.
So we just wanted to go over the 2022 schedule. So I just wanted to highlight the changes that we're proposing. So the meetings are currently scheduled for every 3 weeks instead of every second and fourth Wednesday. So the purpose was to have the ability to use these meetings either as a workshop, hearing, or a meeting, depending on what the need is for the moment. And it also helps reduce the total number of meetings from 24 to 17. So we just wanted to run this past you in case there are any specific dates which you think might be a conflict. So the red circles are holidays and the blue ones are highlighted for the meetings.
So a couple of questions. Are the red circles only federal and Christian holidays?
I believe so. I think we've put in a couple of others too, where in the past we've had some applicants mention that they have difficulty being involved in this. So
Yeah, I would avoid the high holy days for Jews. We had some complaints from the Jewish community in Albany about that in the past, and it looks like the state is moving towards adding some new religious holidays, so we should probably try and avoid those too, if we know them in advance. The other question I had is, has the department spoken to the business community at all to find out how they feel about lowering the amount of meetings, because that was of great concern to them in the past. It may not be now, but in the past, the business community was very unhappy.
I will check on that and let you know, because I know that the planning board and historic resources has reviewed it. So I'm not sure if it's got circulated to their network, but I will get back to you on that.
Yeah, please circulate it to the business community. And also, if it hasn't been looked at by Dave Gallen and by the mayor, ask them what they think, because at one point in time, the city was getting a lot of flack under the previous zoning board and actually at the planning board for not having quorum and then missing lots of meetings, and the developers were going crazy. So
That I do understand, but lots of meetings sometimes is necessitated by the fact we have an incomplete application or a rather controversial project where it requires a lot of input, or there's input from the water department or the police department, or changing variables within the project that affect the timeline. So I just want to be cognizant of, I understand meeting for meeting's sake is frustrating, but when there are substantive issues to discuss, I don't think there's a possibility to speed up or reduce the amount of meetings that it takes for a project to move through the process.
I think we're testing this year's more of a test to see if it works. I'm sorry, give me 1 second.
Yeah.
Sorry, my son has the alarm set at all hours. So yeah, I think this year is more of a test to see if it is functional and operationally efficient. If not, we will sort of revert back to the old
I think
method.
from the standpoint of the board, do we care? Like we signed up for the more meetings. I don't know if we care about meeting the same amount of meetings, but
I think, you start putting more content into less meetings and you still have the same level of commitment. Our time is driven mainly by the sophistication and number of applications. So I don't see fewer meetings modifying the time commitment.
But the only sort of reaction I have is in a post-COVID environment. Are you going to see all the delayed projects start coming forward in the next year? I don't know. So what that's going to do to our workworkload, if anything. That was just
good point.
I don't think construction was one of those industries that didn't seem to get delays,
Yeah. I mean, material wise, I didn't know how much of a delay there was.
That might be affecting things.
No, that's a good point. Supply chain definitely slowed down a lot of people's, less fences because there's no fence posts. They're all in China right now, or that
I
kind
just
of
think
thing.
about that in the context of my own professional career, things that have now gotten pushed. So we'll have a really busy following year, but.
Yeah, I guess my only concern, and I would like to hear what the business community thinks and what City Hall thinks, because I'm agnostic, is that with something that goes on a 3 weekly basis, we will not meet on the same day of any month necessarily. And I'm concerned that without a great deal of more proactive communication, that it may confuse the public. But if you're careful about telling people, the meeting date is going to change month by month based on 3 weeks, and if people know that, then I don't think I have a problem with it.
And what's the point of publishing a calendar if nobody looks at the calendar?
I don't know. I mean,
Yeah, we'll run that
schedule in
past.
advance. Yeah.
We'll run that past the business community and City Hall and get back to you by the next meeting.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm agnostic. I mean, if you all want to try this, I'm okay. I just want to make sure that, that we're not creating bigger impediments to development in the city. Okay, cool. You folks, any questions for them, or can we move on? Okay.
Sam, you want to go to the next? You can go on to the next slide. So I think this one is Martha's.
Yeah.
Martha, are you still here?
I am. And actually,
Okay.
if we want to go, perfect.
Okay.
So this is just to review what the board had voted on at the last meeting on October 27th, the vote to rehear the area variance for Druthers. And that's, so it was project 424 and area variance number 79. And if you want to go to the next slide, please. So here are the meeting minutes. As you know, the board voted to rehear the August 11th conditional grant for an area variance for Druthers to allow a front deck to extend into a right-of-way in a form-based zoning district. And the board specified that the applicant will need additional variances and has to resolve seeker concerns. The motion is to resolve that a rehearing take place at a future board meeting and it will be properly noticed. If you go to the next slide, please. So this is the New York State statute that provides for this authority, and the our BZA has adopted this into its board of rules of procedure for rehearings. So I'm happy to read this. So a motion for the Zoning Board of Appeals to hold a rehearing to review any order, decision, or determination of the board not previously reheard may be made by any member of the board, which happened last meeting. A unanimous vote of all members of the board then present is required for such rehearing to occur, which happened. It was a 5-0-0 decision. Such rehearing is subject to the same notice provisions as an original hearing, so 10 days prior notice, including to the surrounding property owners. And upon such rehearing, the board may reverse, modify, or annul its original order, decision, or determination. And the applicant is not prejudiced, so there's no res judicata issues upon a reapplication of a matter. So that is, I'll kind of pause right there. The following slides are actually, it's the original slide deck that Druthers had presented to us when they were here over the summer. But I really just want to kind of open the floor if any board members have questions about the rehearing process and specific things that they may be looking for the applicant moving forward.
I guess I'll note one of the considerations the board had dove into, I'll say last time around, was efforts to ameliorate some of the congestion or parking issues along that street. And so I'm optimistic that the applicant will be able to provide a good record of their efforts to alleviate those issues and continue to put together an application that causes the least amount of discomfort or creates a good balance for the street that they're on.
Thanks, Martin. Jeff, Paige, do you have any observations that you want to make for Martha and Sam and Palumi? Or yeah, I'm in the same place. I'm just looking forward to seeing the case again. I think it will be interesting. So, do you have anything else you want to add, Martha? Or?
I do have one question. The last time around, correct me if I'm wrong, the sole variance was that there was a prohibition about building over the city's right-of-way. This particular effort requests additional variances. If the slide deck is still part of the previous application, I would expect at some point soon we'll get a more complete application outlining those variances for consideration. And my second question is, this isn't just a rehearing if there are additional variances that are being requested. We're rehearing one of the variances. Not to echo one of my former board members' favorite words, de novo, but essentially we're looking at this with fresh eyes because of the necessity to consider additional variances. Is that correct?
That's correct. And also to correct a procedural defect that was identified in terms of complying with seeker.
Mm-hmm.
So this matter will have to be re-referred to the Albany County Planning Board, and the new variances that would be in a new application would also have to be referred to the Albany County Planning Board. The whole package of variances would be under the same seeker resolution. But it would be, yeah, almost the new variances would be heard in the first instance. The existing variance would though be heard de novo.
Cool, thanks.
Thank you.
Yep, thanks, Martin. You haven't said de novo in a long time, Martin.
It's because Anton's not here. I felt like he said it all the time. I'm like, do you just say that word, or is
Yeah. Okay. Do we need to discuss this anymore, Martha, Sam, Bloomy?
I defer to Martha. So.
Yeah, that's, and I'm sure the board is aware there is a pending lawsuit involving this variance. I'll just kind of, but otherwise I'm all set. If the board's all set.
Great.
Thank
Okay.
you.
Then I think we can close the workshop. And thank you, Palumi and Sam and board members and Martha. And we will meet in December, since we're not going to meet Thanksgiving, the day before Thanksgiving.
oh no.
Unless you want to, Martin.
No, that's fine. Thank you.
Cool. Thank you all, and we'll see you in a few weeks.
Yeah, have a great holiday, everybody.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Have a good evening.
Be
Bye.
safe.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you.